Alright, I'm going to do a quick little overview of the Custom Double Cross. I'm playing my Kiesel Zeus M7. It's got a thorium 7 in the bridge and a lithium 7 in the neck. So, master volume boost, applies to all channels. Both the lead 1 and lead 2 channels, they're pretty much identical. You can control the voicings with the switches. We'll get into that in a second. As far as the clean channel, 3-band EQ plus a presence. There's a drive switch, which adds more gain, and a bright switch, which obviously makes it brighter. So here's how I have it dialed in currently. That's with the bright switch. So yeah, the EQ on this amp is kind of interesting because the treble controls the shelving of the mid frequencies for all the channels. So if you set the treble further back, you get more mids in a specific frequency, and then it becomes more specific as you go further up. So in terms of acting like an actual treble knob, the presence kind of does that more so. It'll be more noticeable when we move to the lead channels. Yeah, clean channel's pretty good. I like it. Does what it needs to. There's a normal input and there's also a tight input. Tight input basically chops off a little bit of the low end and smooths out the high end a tiny bit. It's not a huge difference, at least with the clean tone. Once you get into the high gain tones, it's still subtle, but it's more noticeable. We're just gonna skip over lead 1 because it's basically identical to lead 2. So that's tight. And that's the normal input. Again, not a humongous difference, like off the bat. Once you start playing with the switches, that's where the tones really change. For the sake of simplicity, I'm not going to do an AB comparison of everything, so we'll just leave it in the normal input. Like I said, though, with the EQ, the treble controls the shelving of the mids and the bass. So if you set everything at noon with this amp, it's actually really dark and kind of muffled, and the presence knob adjusts how much aggression it has in terms of the upper mids and high end. The treble also influences that. Honestly, the presence acts more like a traditional treble knob compared to other amps. And as far as the mids, if you dial it in at noon, it gives almost kind of like a scooped vibe. Tend to leave the mids pretty cranked because the manual says that having the mids boosted up actually just enhances the vibes. And because it's scooped at noon, it's like anywhere past about 1 o'clock seems to be pretty good as far as the mid range. It really depends on the guitars you're using it with. The amp naturally has a lot of low mid characteristics, so it doesn't like low mid heavy guitars. Like, this amp just does not play well with my M7 loaded Aristides, but works well with all my other 7 strings and 6 strings. Yeah, so the bass, you got a fair amount of bass at, like, say, noon and until about 10 o'clock, but it's plenty tight. There's no real reason to drop it below 10 o'clock unless you've got a super fat sounding guitar. And honestly, once you start getting into the cross switches, that also makes a huge difference. So for the sake of simplicity, we're just not going to mess with all of it. So the gain stage obviously adds another gain stage. It also kind of thickens up the sound a tiny bit. The tight stage obviously tightens things up, gives it kind of a interesting feeling. It's kind of bouncier. The bright mode obviously makes it brighter on the upper mid, high end, and it also tightens things up. And the thick mode tends to add a lot more low end and low mids back in, so it gets much chunkier. And when you start playing with the different combinations of those 4, you can get some cool tones. I've gotten anywhere from a gent tone to like straight up fat ass doomy sludgy stuff. So it's all just about how you dial it in, and this is not a set everything at noon amp, and you got to play with it a bit. It's a cool amp. I've got a pile of clips up of it already. This is just to give you an overview of some of the stuff it can do. Uh, there's a lot of variety of tones in here. I can't showcase them all in a video like this, and I'll post up some direct recorded stuff later that better showcases it.